So here's your first test. I look a lot better than Steve McLeod. Please click yes on your little thing or no. I know a lot of you, so please don't. And I also learned, where is Nicole? Is futzing a technical term? Futzing, thank you. So Brent, I am not going to use the term futzing today in our interview. So unfortunately for all of you, Dr. McLeod was not able to attend. He's stuck, so you're stuck with me. So Brent tried to back out. He just realized it was me coming up here with him today, so he couldn't back out. So Brent, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, and you know, it's a shame Steve can't be here, but you know,
I'm okay.
Great second
I'm okay.
choice.
Thanks very much.
Great second choice.
So you and I have known each other a long time. I think actually this is our third time that we've done this interview. So
that's true.
So those, probably everyone in this room definitely know who Brent is. So welcome back. How long has it been now that you've been the CEO?
About 14 months.
14 months. Boy, seems longer. So,
it feels longer.
So tell me about the journey. Tell me about the journey in and out of ophthalmology and what it's like being back in ophthalmology.
Yeah. So thanks, Jim, and thanks everyone for having me. Yeah. So it's been a good journey. I joined Bausch & Lomb as CEO in 2010 the first time, and that was really my introduction to this field and to this great community. And then, of course, went to Allergan, and so we were still in ophthalmology, as you know, as an alumnus of Allergan, but more on the drug side. And that ended for me in May of 2020 when we sold it to AbbVie. And, you know, spent the next 2 years just doing boards and venture investing in my own family office. And what I learned during that 2-year hiatus before coming back to Bausch & Lomb last year was that I really love ophthalmology. And I really missed the community, the innovation, the excitement, the challenges, and of course, so many of my friends and colleagues that I was so used to interacting with on almost a daily basis.
Right. So you know, it's interesting because we heard that earlier about how different our industry is, and obviously everyone in this room loves it, but coming back, did you notice any differences when what you were and coming back in the industry, or do you still have those strong collaborations, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you the thing that I learned most about how special this community and this ecosystem is that we have in ophthalmology or in eye care more broadly is when I was at Allergan and we had 5 or 6 therapeutic areas that we worked in. Right. We had GI, we had psych, we had eye care, obviously, we had aesthetics, and what I learned was that in eye care and in ophthalmology more specifically, you had a really symbiotic relationship between the industry and the physicians or the surgeons. And what's so special about that is that sets up a great ecosystem for innovation. So, for example, if you look at psychiatry, where we spent a lot of time at, and we had some great success and some failures, we didn't collaborate much with the medical community like we do here in ophthalmology. There wasn't the same kind of willingness to innovate, to accept innovation, to support innovation, to get involved in trials, to so many of our customers in ophthalmology have the original idea for innovation. And that creates a vibrancy that just doesn't exist in most other medical communities. And so, you know, I always say this, and it's worth repeating. We don't realize how good we have it in this community. We have a group of different players from all different parts, whether it be venture, banking, the medical community, the engineering community, the R&D community, right, that all want to work together to innovate so that patients can have better outcomes and that we can give our physician partners better tools to better treat their patients. And that's a goal that is universally shared by everybody in this room, and it binds us all together, and it creates this energy and this environment that is truly exciting.
By the way, I appreciate that you looked at me when you said psychiatry. I appreciate that. So if somebody ever mapped B&L, it would be an interesting discussion. of the ebbs and flows, and I'm being kind about the ebbs and flows of Bausch and Lomb. So obviously having somebody like you who understands how to handle strategy, how to handle companies, you're dealt a hand where you now need to take it to the next level. So what are you doing to take it to the next level? Because let's say that previous to you coming, there were some ebbs and flows.
Yeah, no, there were. 170-year-old company, and it has been around a long time in the eye care space, right? Started with making spectacles in Rochester, New York, to where we are today. And if you look at the plot of success the company has, it looks a little bit like a roller coaster. So you can call it ebbs and flows, I'll call it a roller coaster. When you really dig deep and you look at this, and I'm sure this is true for any company that's been around for some period of time, most of the dips are associated with lack of innovation and lack of product flow, and most of the highs are when you have innovation and great product flow. I had an additional challenge joining a year and a half ago, or 14 months ago, in that we weren't operationally excellent either. We had a lot of issues in our supply chain. As you know, I went out and recruited one of your former colleagues, Al Waterhouse.
Good man.
To run supply, and we were working our way through that and making progress. We still have some work to do. But to me, it was really the game plan or strategy to get us back on the ascent was operational excellence. Let's make sure we can make high quality, reliably supplied products across the world. Selling excellence, right? Because we have a lot of launches now and tomorrow, and we need to make sure that we know how to execute on launches. And then innovation, and really invest in driving our pipeline, investing in our scientists, investing in the ecosystem to drive the product flow of tomorrow. And so, you know, the good news is we have a lot of product launches, whether it be in pharma or surgical or contact lenses. We have a lot of new products that are flowing through right now and all through next year. But we need that to be a continuous process. It can't just be an 18-month new product cycle. It has to be every year new product cycle.
So, you know, as one-time public CEO, it's a difficult job because every quarter you're based on not what you did, but what you're going to do. So obviously you have to manage a very successful balance sheet, but you have to manage it. So you can only invest in certain things, R&D, people, acquisition. So how are you planning to make those investments over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so you're right. You know, we do have to be mindful of our balance sheet and our situation. And keep in mind, you know, one of the most important things about the public nature of Bausch & Lomb today is we've only done a partial IPO from the old Bausch Health, and we're waiting for the second step of that to happen. I'm hopeful it happens this calendar year. It could be next year as well. But that also will free up capital for us because we'll re-rate ourselves, we'll have a different debt structure, we'll be able to access capital markets in a different way. And so in the interim, you know, we've been doing things. We obviously acquired the Novartis portfolio for dry eye and some pipeline products around ocular pain. And you know, we are investing in the ecosystem. We're doing a lot of small equity deals and partnerships and licensing as well. And we will continue to do those things. But I do think when we finalize the complete separation of Bausch & Lomb, our capital structure will give us a tremendous amount of more flexibility to really deploy capital and build innovation inside our company.
So we saw an earlier chart that talked about, you know, what people in this room were interested in, and we saw retina kind of just jump right to the frontier. So how are you making a decision between pharma, devices, et cetera, from that? You even have contact lens business.
Yeah, so, you know, I'll oversimplify it. Contact lenses, we have our full R&D capabilities. Almost all of our contact lenses have come out of our own labs. We don't generally deploy capital in that way. We develop our own contact lenses, and we just launched a great new daily silicone hydrogel that was developed by our team inside of Bausch & Lomb. Where we do need help deploying capital is in pharma and surgical. And so those are really the two areas we look to. And it's not really a contest. I don't look at it as we got to do one here and we got to do one there, we got to do one there and two over here. It's really about pursuing the best opportunities, right? Where's the greatest innovation? Where's the greatest patient need? Where is the best return financially, and what fits us strategically, right? And those are the key criteria that I use to evaluate whether we should do something or not. And so if we saw great technology in surgical or in IOLs or in, I don't know, a new microscope or something, or a new piece of capital equipment, we would deploy it if it fit all those internal criteria. It's not a question of do we do one over here versus over there.
So you're sitting with your team. You know, you have a lot of young entrepreneurs here. Our industry has been built on large companies, usually acquiring the smaller entities. When you sit internally, how do you manage the decision making here? Because everybody's going to have their self-interest. So what's the criteria where you finally tell the people this is where we're going to go?
Yeah, so probably the thing that I look at most is if I were to buy something, can our team make it better in our hands than in the place we bought it from? And so in other words, how confident are you in your team's ability to execute? So if we were to buy something, let's say for China, right, a new technology, or buy a business in China for China, how confident are we in the management team in China being able to execute on the promise of whatever it is we're acquiring? Same could be said about surgical, right? Or if we're going to buy a new IOL and we're going to launch it around the globe, how confident we are in our team's ability to execute on that. Same with pharma. And so I really look at obviously all the external criteria. Does it fit strategically, financially? Do consumers or customers, or most importantly, do physicians want it? Will they use it? But most importantly is, can we do something? Are we better owner of it than wherever we acquired it from?
So you all have to give Brent a real applause here, because he was prepared to meet with Steve McLeod, and they had these unbelievable questions. I read them, and there were a lot of three-syllable words in them, so I could not use those words in my discussion. So I'm just trying to keep it real simple. So you actually just talked about something very interesting outside the United States, okay? So now you have to think about deploying resources. We saw two charts that talked about that the economy is going to be predicated on what happens in November. And that's obviously, depending on what side of the fence, doesn't matter. There's going to be challenges to OUS businesses. How are you thinking about deploying resources outside the United States?
Yeah, so I certainly follow global politics and the global economy pretty closely. But that's not a huge factor generally in the decision on how to deploy capital in our industry, because that's a really short-term phenomenon for the most part. Worst case, something like that could impact a year or two. Most of the things that we're trying to do are for 10, 20, 30 years. And so I don't let that, that kind of global economy. And look, I follow closely. I'm not too worried about it. I think the world is kind of in this malaise, but it's not a bad malaise. I think the interest rates are about as high as they're going to be. So this is, in terms of being able to buy equipment for our practices or whatnot, this is about the highest cost of capital we're going to see for some period of time. China growth is slowing, but it's still a big market with tremendous need, and it's still growing. It's just growing, albeit at a slower pace. Europe is pretty steady. Maybe there'll be a few economies in Europe that have a little pullback. And so on the margins, it certainly will impact, pay perhaps, premium IOLs with cash pay components and stuff like that. But it's going to be temporary. It's going to come and go. And so if you're really committed to innovation, do the right thing and drive the decision to invest in those businesses for the long term. Like I said, we've been here 170 years. I'd like to...
I have not been here 170 years.
You look really good for 169.
Thank you very much.
But the point is, you want to run a company for the long term, not the short term. You need to factor the short term in, but that shouldn't drive your decision making. I'm not a big believer in run and hide because the world looks a little more difficult.
Right.
I'm a believer the world looks a little more difficult, so companies with a little bit more capital have an advantage because we can deploy in that environment because of the stability we have versus perhaps some competitors.
So you actually were very successful in aesthetics. I think with
I know I'm 168.
Yeah, you're 168. You look really good. But you know, what were the learnings? And actually, through our winning pitch challenge, we had a very successful winner, kind of in the aesthetics arena. Learnings that we could take in ophthalmology from aesthetics.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of similarities. There are a few differences. You know, obviously, great physician community, great surgeons, great doctors. I think the one thing that they probably are a little bit more advanced at doing is engaging with patients. And look, there are obviously exceptions. There's some practices I've been to in ophthalmology that are amazing at this. But I think, you know, like for like, they do, it's more a regular part of their community. They engage in social media better. They engage in follow-up a little bit better. They try to own that patient for the life, and they have ways of using technology to connect with their patients on a regular basis. Some practices in ophthalmology are doing that really, really well, but there's still, I think, a divide between plastic surgery and ophthalmology in terms of that connectivity to the patient. Now, obviously, they're doing more fun things, and they're you know, people always want to improve their look or get their next injection or what have you. But you know, what we do in this community is frankly more important. We're giving people, or preserving people's vision, and nothing's more cherished than their senses. We were joking yesterday, you know, it still baffles me, I think I've said this before, that the dental community got patients to go twice a year for a checkup on a routine basis. That's built into our psyche, and we can't get people to get an annual eye exam. It's just baffling to me. The gift of vision is so much more important than perhaps your teeth. Well, not to, if there are any dentists in the room, but I mean, preserving your vision is absolutely critical to quality of life, and yet we can't get people to take a regular eye exam. So there's something we as a community still need to do to engage the public in the importance of regular checkups, seeing your ophthalmologist, seeing your optometrist, whatever it may be, but really preserving and maintaining your vision is and as you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, we all know this, if so many of these diseases of the eye are progressive, and if they're found earlier, they're so much easier to treat and deal with than if you wait till you actually have a distortion of your vision or a problem with your vision, and yet we can't get that into the common practice.
So we saw a COVID chart, and we know that from COVID, innovation kind of stalled, et cetera, but one of the biggest impacts, definitely the ophthalmologists are feeling it, but companies, is the return of the workforce, right? Not just the standpoint of, can I work at home, but some didn't even want to come back to work. So how are you at Bausch & Lomb handling the return of the workforce?
Yeah, so it's an interesting challenge, and let's be clear. This is a U.S. office worker problem only. It's not happening in the rest of the world, and it's not happening to people who don't work in offices. You know, so what we used to call white-collar jobs, right? And it's really bizarre to me because I always go to the office. I go to work every day. I've never worked from home in my life. But this idea that you know, somehow people don't want to work anymore is truly baffling to my psyche. But it is true. Just amongst some senior executives, some of my team will laugh because they know the story. I said something about doing a meeting on Friday, and they said, Fridays? People don't work on Fridays. And I said, when did we go to 4 days? Like, when did that happen? Friday is a paid work day. Like, I get maybe if I said Saturday, but what's up with Friday? And so look, I think I used to be, when I ran Allergan, I was really very tough about people having to live and work in our offices, right? Near whether it be in Irvine or New Jersey or anywhere in the world. The pandemic, you know, did teach me that we can be more flexible, and there are a lot of benefits to that flexibility of remote work. We can recruit more diversity. We can recruit the best people, regardless if they live, you know, within 10, 20 miles of the office, and so it opens up the whole world as a talent pool. But I do think we need to figure out how do we create a culture that allows people to work in a distributed environment. to be connected. Do you need more perks in the office? Do you need more technology? One of the things we're trying to play around with now is how do we get rid of meetings, or how do we get rid of 1 hour meetings? Can we do something more innovative to get rid of the Zoom, Teams, whatever technology you use, but the monotony of one after another, and things that you used to do by just popping in somebody's office now is an hour Zoom with 30 people and wasting so much time. So we are pioneering and thinking about new technology. I got involved with a startup that's creating technology around this because it's something that I think is so powerful, and it needs to change because if I have daughters that are entering the workforce, but if you're not, and they're remote workers, I'm like, how do you get indoctrinated? If you're a recent college grad and you go to work for a company and you don't have to show up in the office, like, how do you learn? How do you get mentored? How do you do all those things? So it's a challenge for sure, but it's something we're testing a lot of things. Hopefully in the next year we'll figure out what works better than other things, but it is absolutely a challenge. But thankfully, it is a U.S. office worker challenge only. It's not impacting us anywhere else in the world.
You talk about the office. I know one of the things that you pride yourself on, and I have admiration, a lot of people in this audience do, is you go in the field. So you get to work with the rep, which is still the toughest job I ever had. But what's it like now in the office? What do you hear from the physicians that you didn't hear maybe prior to coming to Bausch & Lomb?
Yeah, a lot, and I love spending time out of the office, so that's why I realized I was a hypocrite, because I don't like to be in the office. I like to go to work, I like to be out in the field, I like to be at meetings, I like to be visiting our locations all over the world and talking to our colleagues, riding with sales reps, whatever it may be. But, when I've been out in the field in offices, I hear the same thing that I heard, ironically, 10 years ago. Our customers, or people we want to become our customers, they want high quality, reliable, innovative products. They want great service. They want us to invest in R&D and innovation. They want new tools to work to treat their patient, whether it be a new IOL for cataract, or a new laser, or a new eye drop for dry eye. But they want innovation. They want to try new things, and they want the best tools in the toolbox to continue to do their craft.
So I saw on the chart earlier, AI was everybody's interest. I'm still trying to figure this out. Tell me about AI in our space. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to Bausch & Lomb? What does it mean to ophthalmology?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of AI. I think it is going to be not just for our space, but for businesses around the world. It's going to be a massive productivity enhancer. I think we're going to see productivity improvements over the next, let's say, year or two that we never thought we could have seen before. And so examples, we're using it in the manufacturing environment. We started in contact lenses, because if you've ever seen a contact lens line, they're highly automated, multi-step lines. We have a lot of robotics in that, and we collect a massive amount of data as a contact lens is built and cured and delivered. And so we now are running a pilot in our Rochester plant where we're looking at everything from taking away human decision-making on the line to predictive maintenance, because if a line goes down, it's massive inefficiency. And every % improvement on yield equals real dollars. And we're starting to see that yield improvement just after a few months. And so we're just at the beginning of that. I can't imagine where that's going to take us in terms of even quality checking and all the manual steps. If we can automate that, because we're already collecting large data sets with AI. We're doing R&D now. We're screening molecules using AI. We're looking at new novel targets, how proteins can fold and connect. We're so much cool stuff happening there. In marketing, we're starting to use AI on the consumer side to figure out when do we need to discount or provide coupons, what are consumer buying behaviors. And so all these things are just starting. But the amount of efficiency that ultimately can come from deploying AI is, I think, something we don't even realize the benefit of. That's why when you look at some of the economic numbers, it's like everything else, like climate change or anything else. They never factor human ingenuity into it. right? So you look at what's happening, and then, human ingenuity steps in, and the world looks different all of a sudden. It bends the curve. And I think that's going to happen in the economies over the next year or two with AI.
Do you say that on a global basis, that you think the AI is on a global basis?
Absolutely. I know some CEOs of other industries that are massively deploying AI and getting rid of call centers. They're getting rid of all sorts of logistics. They're improving customer service. And we're just at the beginning. So think about how quickly in the last year, from like when ChatGPT launched, right, to the public, how quickly it has proliferated, and all the venture money and all the investments from Microsoft to Google to Apple to whoever that are going into this field. I don't even think we can imagine what this is going to be like. It's like in the late 90s, we never thought the internet was going to be the productivity tool that it is today. So I think AI actually could be bigger than that.
So as I end it, a lot of your colleagues, David Endicott's, the Peters, the Ewens of the world, Andy Corley's of the world, all people that have led and are leading successful organizations. Work-life balance, it's always, we profess it, do we practice it?
Yeah, I think I do. I try to, at least. Look, I have two things I'm passionate about. It's work and my family and friends. And those are the two things I spend my time on. Would I have time for a third or fourth hobby? Probably not. But I think, as I've gotten older, I really have taken to heart that you focus on the things you enjoy doing and are most important to you. And try to say no to things, and that's the hardest part for me, and it probably is for you too. Say no to things that don't fit into those two buckets. And so stop distracting yourselves by, those kind of things that were nice to do, but you didn't really have to do, and you weren't that passionate about it, but your friend asked you to do it, so yeah, I'll go do it. That's where as I've matured, that's where I've learned to say no more often.
Well, as I enter my 45th year in this industry, it's great to have people like you here. It's great to have people that really care about our industry, because it's all predicated, as we heard, on new technologies. And so on behalf of the whole Eyecelerator, I want to thank you for taking the time. I just texted McLeod, and he said I did a hell of a job. So on behalf of
and you're better looking doing it.
I'm much better looking.
Yeah.
I just noticed, though, my nose looks a lot bigger on the big screen. So if there's a rhinoplastic surgeon in, please let me know. So with that, thank you, Brent. Let's give Brent a big round of applause.
Thank you.